Hi, everybody. Now we need some good show titles. Anyone got any show titles, please?
Okay, yeah, that was a good show.
I think in good
yeah,
Nick.
I thought so.
I like in good Nick.
Yeah, yes.
Mike
Yes.
Kuipers, is your back better? Hope your back's better.
Who's back?
Mike Kuipers was in bed with.
Yeah, he
Oh,
was in
yeah,
bed
oh, yeah,
last
exactly.
He was.
episode.
Sorry, I thought he was. You're referring.
He was bedridden.
He was indeed. I know just how uncomfortable that can
Yeah,
be.
I'm sure you can identify with that.
Yeah.
All right, so let me. Oh, Jeff, I'm going to share my screen and then I'm going to Skype you.
Okay.
Just hang on.
Boy, it's a bit warm in here.
Skype me, baby.
I'm going to put my fan on and see if you can hear it. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself here.
Okay. Hello. I do hear you. Hang on. Let me mute my StreamYard.
So, can you hear the fan?
Can you hear my child?
Yeah. Yes, sadly.
I can hear my child much more than I can hear your fan. I can't hear your fan.
Well, that's good. I'm going to end up with half me frozen and the other half sweaty, I expect. It sounds like a parrot, your child.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on up there. Let me text my wife. Tell her to get him in line.
Well, it's not bath time, so. Okay, everybody. There's my beer for tonight. Special beer.
Stormtrooper.
Born to brew. Lightspeed
Stormtrooper.
Pilsner.
Lightspeed.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hey,
Lovely.
is it acceptable to fly around with beer and checked luggage? Like
Yeah.
beer cans?
Yeah.
That's
That's not a problem.
a lot. I'll be out somewhere and
I mean,
I can't buy like a single, and I'll buy a 6-pack, and then I'll just take the rest of it and put it in my roller bag, and I have it on the airplane.
They can have guns in your check luggage. You can have a beer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's this. I don't think it's a news story, but there was a football player that got arrested this week for having two loaded guns in his checked bag.
Oh, good.
Which seems
Lord.
like
Check bag, I
the
think
most.
you can have them in your check.
I'm sorry,
Loaded?
his carry-on.
Loaded?
His carry-on.
Oh,
He got
carry-on.
stopped.
Okay.
He got
That's not
stopped
good.
at security, and he is pleading not guilty, which I don't quite understand. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but that seems like the most red-handedest thing he can do. But his argument is he didn't mean to carry the loaded guns. So I think I need to brush up on my legal interpretations.
I didn't mean to be going 95.
I mean, you can't even have an unloaded gun in your carry-on, can you? Loaded or unloaded, you can't have it at all, right?
No guns, no gun parts,
guns.
no ammo, no nothing.
No nothing. No
Yeah.
nothing.
It's all got to be checked.
I had somebody who
My level's low. Okay.
had bought a part of a gun,
Mhm.
and that part of the gun was disassembled. And he was complaining because TSA wouldn't let him take it on. And he was like, not only is it not a functional gun, but it's a disassembled
Part of a gun.
Yeah. And they were like, nope.
And the other parts weren't with him. Like, it's not like he could assemble it.
Right. But it's just a no.
It's a no-go.
Okay. Paul Verhagen is saying my level is low.
Well, it doesn't sound low to me, but I guess it does to them.
You could try shouting.
Okay, I'll talk like this.
Much better.
Is that your PA voice? Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard. Aboard. Is that better, Paul?
Tick tock, tick tock.
Hello. Testing
So
1, 2, 3, 4,
everybody
5, 6,
here-
7, 8, 9, 10.
We're going to try. We're going to aim to do about an hour and a half or so in this bit, and then the two Nicks are going to depart, and we're going to have a little break, and then Steffi's going to join Jeff and I around 6:30 Eastern Daylight Time for part 2. Where did Jeff go?
For a walk.
Come on, Jeff. We want to get this show on the road.
Oh, I'm good now. Since it's only an hour and a half. It's just Julie wants an early night because she's obviously got to do the driving tomorrow morning.
How far? Where do you have to go?
The hospital's in Portsmouth.
Okay. Is it the one you were in when you were having your heart issues?
Yep.
Yeah.
So they'll probably give me COVID, and it's about 40 minutes away. But that time of the morning, it won't be that bad, probably. Just about do it in half an hour.
Okay, Jeff, let's get this show on the road.
Yes, ma'am.
He can't hear you.
I can hear you. All right. We'll do a sound check on the
Roger.
audio.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door.
Good.
WAPG.
Sounds good.
And
So, Nick, is that a Beechcraft hat or a Boston's Red Sox hat?
Beechcraft.
Good, Jeff.
okay.
You know, Nick, you look a smidge like Hannibal Lecter back there in your picture. That closing scene where he's at an island airport following the bad guy. He's got
Yes, exactly right. I'm just about to consume Jeff with a
oh no,
The nice Chianti.
nice bottle of nice Chianti.
Chianti. Yeah, Chianti.
I
good.
need to turn the volume down a little bit on that one, I think. Is that all right?
Yep, I gotta give kudos to Radio Roger. He's turning these intros around like that. He's
Oh, yeah.
All
That's
right.
awesome.
Good man.
that's what happens when you throw a professional into the mix
exactly.
instead of dealing with us.
We're
And-
we're not. Never mind.
Your recorder's on, right, Jeff?
My recorder is on Liz,
Okay.
but I'm going to throw this one on too, just for good measure.
Okay. All right. Belt and suspenders.
I'm
Yep.
going.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. We're ready.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door. WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy episode 575.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door, with your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 21st of June, 2023.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Put your light and it's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
An Argentinian flight attendant calls in a bomb threat against a plane carrying her ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend. The NTSB says the flight crew of a freighter had to ditch off of Hawaii because they misidentified the engine that was failing. More news and your feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 575 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He is an award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins on 92.3 FM in
New York City.
Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the best aviation podcast in the universe, covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. I'm Captain Jeff, a pilot at a major legacy airline based in the United States of America, and joining me from his studio,
1000. In Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
professional photographer, former RAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330, A340 captain for Virgin Atlantic Airways. It's Captain Nick.
Good evening, Jeff, on a lovely summer's evening here on the longest day. It's not going to be dark for very long today.
Oh, yeah, good point. I forgot completely about that. All right, good to see you, Captain Nick. Also joining us from his home studio in the Air Capital, low and slow pilot, A&P mechanic, old airplane enthusiast, engineer in the aerospace and defense industry. It's Nick Camacho.
Hey, Captain Jeff. I'm glad we could get back together here. Just a little bit of them around.
Good to have you with us again today, and also from A Place to Stand, A Place to Grow. Retired financier, aviation enthusiast, spreadsheet master, and our producer-director in Ontario, Canada. It's Liz Piper.
Hello, everybody. Happy summer 2023.
Yay!
Yay!
All right.
Except now the days start getting shorter again. Boo.
Oh.
Anyway. All right,
well.
guys. Have a
Let's
good
enjoy
show.
it while we can. Okay. Thanks, Liz. And let's go right to aviation news.
Stand by for news.
All right, our first item from the Aviation Herald. A West Atlantic ATR 72-200 registration Golf Charlie Lehman November Kilo, performing freight flight NTP 905 from Jersey to East Midlands in the UK with 3 crew, landed on East Midlands runway 9 at 21:41 local time when the aircraft slowed to about 80 knots, but then veered to the right. A nose wheel tire damaged a runway edge light. On June 8, 2023, the UK's AAIB, Air Accidents Investigation Branch, released their final bulletin, concluding the probable cause of the serious incident was, after landing in a light crosswind, as the aircraft decelerated through 80 knots, it swerved right and hit a runway edge light. The loss of directional control probably occurred because of insufficient into-wind aileron. The recovery of directional control was delayed by the use of nose-wheel steering through the tiller rather than the use of rudder. The ATSB reported that both pilots, the captain, 61 years old, ATPL, 11,011 hours total, a lot of time, but only 63 hours on this type. He was the pilot flying. The first officer had recently converted to the ATR-72. The captain had previously flown BAE ATPs. The Air Transportation Safety Board summarized the sequence of events. They were operating from Jersey Airport to East Midlands and made a radar-vectored autopilot-coupled approach to runway 9. During the approach, the reported wind at the airport obtained by the pilots was 150 degrees at 10 knots. Okay, so you got runway 9, 150 at 10, so it's a right quartering crosswind. Not a lot of direct crosswind there. The commander was the pilot flying. He stabilized the approach by 1,000 feet, then established the aircraft with a slight crab into the wind and power set at 25% torque. In the latter stages of the approach, the commander disconnected the autopilot, removed the small amount of crab in the flare, and touchdown aligned with the runway. Okay, so far, so good. Once all wheels were on the runway, he selected ground idle, and as the aircraft continued to decelerate along the runway, it began to swerve to the right. He handed control to the co-pilot and applied left nose wheel tiller to straighten the aircraft. The commander noticed that the right wing lifted, which he ascribed to the turn to the right in combination with the crosswind from the right. The commander then applied more tiller input to the left, aided by the application of left pedal and differential left brake input by the co-pilot, to which the aircraft slowly began to respond. During the landing roll, the commander reported seeing an object on the runway ahead and to the left. Review of the closed-circuit TV subsequently showed a spark under the aircraft during the landing roll. The METAR for the airport valid at the time of landing reported wind 140 at 12 knots. The commander reported the excursion to air traffic control, and a runway inspection was carried out, which reported a broken edge light. An engineering inspection found damage to the tire of the nose wheel, which was replaced. The tire of the nose wheel? Okay. I think that's the same thing, isn't it? Nose wheel and tire. The AAIB analyzed there was probably insufficient into-wind aileron applied during the landing roll. both before and after the handover of control, which I'm still wondering about, actually, which resulted in the upwind wing lifting and the aircraft turning into the wind, what we call weather veining. The initial attempt to correct the term by nose wheel steering through the use of tiller rather than the use of rudder to maintain directional control was also likely contributed to the runway excursion. Let's see. The manufacturer's guidance indicates that the use of rudder above 70 knots instead of the tiller would have resulted in better control. And that's what I've always learned and practiced, and I'm sure you guys probably the same. Discuss.
Cocking.
Sure.
Excuse
All right.
me?
But that has nothing to
Yeah.
do with this podcast. That's the triple X version of the APG.
We over here, just to prevent any confusion amongst English-speaking audiences, we call it weathercocking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Fine. But
all right.
Whether you call it weather veining or weather cocking, that's just something that naturally occurs.
You guys are vain. I was just going to say, I wonder if this aircraft has nose steering, which is connected to the rudder pedals. Certainly bigger aircraft do. I don't know about this one. So does he have nose steering through the rudder? That would be about the only thing I can think of. I mean, if the aircraft starts drifting and you're still pretty close to flying speed, I would have thought it'd be quite instinctive to use the rudders to keep the aircraft straight, certainly until you get down below, well, as their manufacturer says, 70 knots. So, that would be my first instinct. And particularly if you've got nose steering that's connected to the rudder, you'll get the best of both worlds. You'll get the nose wheel helping you, and of course the directional control from the fin, from the rudder on the fin, helping you. It's a pretty well known effect, weather cocking or veining. So it's just the action of the crosswind on the big fin, tending to push the nose of the aircraft into wind, which in this case will be to the right. But it's not like it was a hugely strong crosswind. And I don't know about you, Jeff, but you wouldn't perhaps be as sensitive to it as I would, because I flew aircraft with podded engines that are pretty damn close to the ground. So on the 340 and the 330, we were very conscious of the amount of angle of bank we had on the aircraft as we were on the runway or in the process of landing, because of course you let a wing drop a little bit, you can scrape all hell out of your wing pods, the engine pods. Perhaps he wasn't as sensitive to this, but it's one of those things that we were very disciplined about it, keeping the wings very level during the landing phase. So letting that wing come up surprises me. And of course, that is quite likely to, anyone who's driven a three-wheeler, and not many of us have probably, is quite likely to cause the airplane to scoot, or become difficult to control directionally. So all that combined, but I'm with you. You raised your eyebrows at the technique of handing over control to the the first officer. Perhaps it's a function of him wanting to go for the tiller. I don't know whether that required him to release the controls in some manner.
Yeah, that might be.
But I don't know
question.
about that.
Does it require? I mean, if you have to use the tiller on that particular aircraft, does that mean that you can't maintain proper, controls with the regular controls?
I'm sure we've got some ATR pilots listening.
So.
Perhaps one of them would be kind enough to respond to us.
Yeah, that as soon as I read that, I went, "What?" And the fact that they didn't mention it in their report as a possible contribution to this, maybe it's because, you can't use the tiller, the steering tiller, and fly the yoke and the rudder pedals and all that kind of stuff all at the same time. I don't know. It just doesn't sound right to me. But as you mentioned, instinctively is a key here. That as soon as you take out a crab and you still have that wind's still out there, you have to just instinctively put the left rudder in and put the right aileron or the right, the yoke into the wind to keep the right wing from flying up just something you learn from very early on when you're learning to fly. So.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and apart from anything else, I mean, he had a bit of a wiggle on the runway. No one would have said a word if he hadn't hit one under the runway lights. I think he didn't actually leave the runway, I don't think. I guess the runway light was right on the edge, so he came close to it. But
yeah,
and he hit it with his nose wheel. So I'm a bit surprised about that. I thought the main would have been the thing, but anyway, not a major problem. Just a bit of a probably a refly, a bit of extra instruction on the techniques for this aircraft if he was used to something that handled differently. I required, and I'm sure he's happily carrying on and probably forgotten all about it until he listens to the show.
Yeah, well, if you're listening to the show, our apologies.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, when did this happen? Happened last year, so that means he's probably 62 now. He's getting close to retirement anyway. I say, hey, just go ahead and retire. Just forget about it. Pack it in. Forget about all this stuff.
Yeah.
And get on with your life. Next accident is from Aviation Herald. A Trans-Air Roads Aviation Boeing 737-200, registration 810 Tango Alpha, performing flight 810 from Honolulu to Kahului in Hawaii, USA, with 2 crew, was climbing out. Remember, we talked about this right after it happened. They were climbing out of Honolulu's runway 8 right when the crew stopped the climb at about 2,000 feet, reporting they had lost the number 1 engine, JT8D left-hand engine. Now, remember, we played the live ATC communications there, and there was some confusion right off the bat because one of their... Oh, I'm quiet.
Okay. Just a little. I seem to be...
All right. Why is that? Let me pop it up a little bit more. Is that better?
Yep, that's better for me.
Don't want to overdo it. All right, let me turn down my volume, headset volume. Okay. Hopefully that's better for everyone. So we did cover this accident actually, after it had happened. And I do remember playing the live ATC tapes, communication. And one of this company's other flights, I think they were coming into Honolulu International, and there was some confusion about the call signs, very similar call signs. And the accident flight had a little trouble right off the bat with making the air traffic control tower understand that they were declaring an emergency. And then I think they ended up taking the wrong heading instruction meant for the other jet. And so there was a lot of confusion going on there. But they finally were able to express to air traffic control that they were having a problem with their engine and that they were declaring an emergency and wanted to return right away. And so they were vectored around. At some point, they lost sight of the airport. This was at night, but they got so low out there south of the airport that they just couldn't see the airport anymore. And then they thought, we not only do we have engine issues with the left hand, but it looks like we have a number 2 engine problem as well. And then they were given vectors to another airport a little bit closer. Let's see, what was the name of that one, Liz? Kalaialoa Airport. And that's a little bit to the west of Honolulu International Airport. And I think it used to be, or maybe it still is, a Coast Guard, U.S. Coast Guard facility stationed there as well. But anyway, but they didn't make it to that airport either. They ended up ditching the aircraft into the Pacific Ocean about 2 miles from Kalaialoa Airport. There's an image of the front portion of the 737-200 on the ocean floor, and some bits and pieces of it. There are some largely intact pieces there on the ocean surface. But of the ocean floor. Thank you, not the ocean surface. And so the NTSB sent out some investigators and started analyzing this. It looks like on the 16th of June, just a few days ago, the NTSB released their final report concluding the probable cause of the accident was the flight crew members' misidentification of the damaged engine after leveling off the airplane and reducing thrust, and their use of only the damaged engine for thrust during the remainder of the flight, resulting in an unintentional descent and forced ditching into the Pacific Ocean. Contributing to the accident were the flight crew's ineffective crew resource management, high workload, and stress. So it starts off by talking about what I just kind of summarized happened there, and going to get to this part of the analysis. The process of declaring the emergency to air traffic control took 1 minute 53 seconds. During a post-accident interview, the captain stated that his communications with the controller became a project, and then it took a while for ATC to know what was going on regarding the emergency. The captain added that those communications took too much of his time away from the cockpit. Although frequency congestion impeded the captain's efforts to declare an emergency to ATC, the captain could have entered squawk code 7700, indicating an emergency situation, into the transponder, and deferred further radio communications until after the first officer stabilized the aircraft in level flight. In addition, about 25 seconds after the previous exchange between the controller and captain ended, the controller asked for more information about the emergency, including which engine was affected. The operator's simulator guide stated that after declaring an emergency involving a single engine failure after V1, the captain could provide additional information to ATC when time permitted. Because further communication with ATC was not a priority at the time, the captain responded appropriately to the controllers by stating that he could provide the information later. The simulator guide also stated that after declaring an emergency to ATC, selecting flaps to the up position, reducing thrust, and establishing the airplane's climb at 210 knots, the pilot flying was to fly, navigate, and communicate. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Oh, okay, I'm just not used to looking at it as fly, navigate, and communicate. And the pilot monitoring was to reconfirm the failure. However, much of the captain's time by this point in flight was spent listening and responding to ATC transmissions. Thus, communications between the captain and controller after the onset of the emergency caused interruptions that delayed the flight crew's efforts to address their emergency situation. Maybe too much emphasis on communication here. While the captain was communicating with the controller, the first officer, as the pilot flying, incrementally reduced left and then right engine thrust to near flight idle so that the airplane could slow down after leveling off. The first officer stated that he had been trained in the simulator to move the thrust levers together until the crew was ready to confirm the affected engine. Thus, the first officer's decision to independently move the left and then the right thrust lever was inappropriate. When the captain turned his attention back to the airplane after communicating with the controller, both engines were near flight idle. The EPR was 1.05 and 1.12 for the left and right engine, respectively. Airspeed was 227 knots and decreasing. The captain commanded a speed of 220 and then announced that he was taking control of the airplane. Flight data recorder data indicated that the captain did not promptly increase thrust after the airspeed subsequently dropped below the 220 knot target speed. During a post-accident interview, the captain stated he was unaware that the first officer had reduced left engine thrust to near flight idle. The captain's lack of awareness of the first officer's thrust reductions played a role in his handling of the in-flight emergency. About 4 minutes elapsed between the time of the flight crew's correct identification of the right engine as the affected engine and the first officer's incorrect assessment about the left engine. This amount of time played a role in the first officer's misidentification of the left engine as the affected engine. The first officer had a high workload during that time as the pilot flying. He had to, among other things, closely monitor basic flight parameters, fly the airplane to achieve the target airspeed, altitude, and heading. The first officer was also dealing with interruptions due to the interspersing of various operational tasks. Although the first officer had previously verbalized that the right engine had lost power, the first officer's workload demands left few opportunities for him to commit that information to memory. Okay. In addition, after the airplane had leveled off and the left and right EPRs had been reduced to near flight idle, no adverse yaw, the primary cue indicating that the right engine was affected, was occurring, and the engine indications were ambiguous because both were producing low thrust, with the EPR on the left and right engines at 1.05 and 1.12. Yeah, because you have both of the thrust levers back at idle. Although thrust was low on both engines, the first officer might have thought that the left engine was affected because its EPR level was lower, actually lower than the right. For that to be the case, the first officer would have had to have forgotten his earlier actions of pulling back the power on the left operational engine and then the right engine to reduce speed. Okay, then they have a quick little thing. I guess he was taking prescription medications, the first officer, but they analyzed that the potential side effects of these medications found that their use likely did not play a role in this accident. They also considered fatigue, even though the errors that the first officer made were consistent with the effects of fatigue. The evidence supporting fatigue was inconclusive. The captain initially questioned the first officer's assessment, stating, "Number 1 is gone," but then accepted the assessment and stated, "So we have number 2. At that time, no salient cue was available to indicate which engine was affected. The captain remembered his initial assessment that the right engine was affected, but stated that he had assumed that the first officer had a better understanding of the engine status because he was flying the airplane when the captain was communicating the emergency to ATC. The captain had confidence in his first officer's assessment of the affected engine based on their flight experience together. During a post-accident interview, the captain stated that his first officer never makes a mistake. Wait a minute.
Yeah, well, he has that.
We always make mistakes.
Yeah,
every flight, usually a very, very minor little error here and there, and that's why there are at least 2 of us up there to catch each other's
perhaps
mistake.
what he should have said was that he had great confidence in his first officer.
Yeah, never makes a mistake. That is, no, that
that's
cannot be true. Nevertheless, the captain did not take any action to verify the first officer's assessment about the left engine, such as advancing the thrust lever for the left engine to determine whether an increasing thrust occurred. The operator simulator guide stated that pilots should be alert for changes indicating that the thrust was being reduced on the incorrect or the operational engine. However, the crew did not notice the reduction in adverse yaw that resulted from the first officer's reduction of thrust on the left engine. Subsequently, the reductions in thrust on the left and right engines, which the first officer made to reduce speed, meant that there would be no noticeable indications that would have reinforced the idea to the crew members that the left engine was affected as they determined initially. If the captain had thought to test the thrust on the left engine by advancing the left thrust lever, the flight crew would likely have noticed an increase in left engine thrust, a yaw to the right engine sounds indicating the left engine was capable of producing normal power. The captain could also have simultaneously advanced both thrust levers and observed the left engine producing more thrust. However, neither flight crew member suggested that the captain perform these actions, and neither of these potential diagnostic steps was included in the operator's engine failure or shutdown checklist. Further, the engine failure and shutdown checklist would not have helped the captain sort out the situation because the checklist appeared to assume that the airplane would be experiencing ongoing asymmetric thrust, which was not the case at this point in the accident flight. The checklist did not consider the possibility that a flight crew would need to delay checklist execution until after completing steps in an operator's single engine departure procedure, such as leveling off at a low altitude and reducing thrust on both engines, because there was no longer a clear sign of which engine had failed, and the crew had forgotten its earlier determination that the right engine had lost power. Critical thinking was required for the crew to devise diagnostic steps to confirm the affected engine. However, each pilot's thinking was degraded by high workload and stress. Oh, there you go. So that was, So Captain Nick, what do you think here? It seems like there was an inordinate amount of attention to the communication step of aviate, navigate, communicate, priority.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of human factors here. And a lot of ignoring the priorities of what the pilots were supposed to be doing and concentrating on what was attracting their attention rather than what they should have been doing. And the air traffic and the confusion was obviously a major factor. I mean, they'd only ever lost one engine. The aircraft should have been capable of flying around for hours with the remaining engine. There was absolutely no reason why, at least until they got the aircraft into a stabilized situation and got some bit of height under their belt and had properly identified the problem and dealt with it, they didn't even had to start thinking about turning around for the airport yet. So they could have just carried on droning across the ocean, get it all stowed away, correct any confusion with which engine was giving them a problem, and then sort out from the air traffic, yeah, we're over here and we'll squawk for you if you want, and can you now turn us back and give us an engine, because we're all sorted out, everything's all packed away on the flight deck, we're all happy, and we're now ready to make a single engine approach. So I have enormous sympathy with the crew, because we are so used to responding to air traffic promptly and obeying their instructions and dealing with them. It's very hard sometimes to push them away and remove their insistent voice from your head and just concentrate on other actions. So yes, I think that was a major factor, particularly in the initial part. Having got to the point where he said, right, well, I've kind of got that sorted out now, but what's happening to the speed? I also have sympathy with the crew, because first officer correctly identified his fault with an engine, and he brought that throttle back. So that was the right engine, yeah, number 2. I'm pretty sure. Just yes. From I wasn't there. I'm confused now.
Yeah, I know. It's easy to get confused reading this whole thing, but I believe the right engine was the one that had the failure.
Yeah, had the problem. So whilst the throttles are mismatched, it's very easy to remember, okay, the left engine's the one producing the thrust because that's the throttle that's up, the right engine is idle. And bear in mind, other than the difference in EPA, I haven't seen any indication of something else that would have pointed to the right-hand engine being the faulty engine. So it was still capable of producing some power. It was still winding. It wasn't producing full power. That was the problem. I think they lost some blades in it, but the engine was still effectively running, albeit well below par. Once you bring that left engine throttle back to now match the right engine, without any other indication, it's going to be very easy to misidentify which engine you originally assessed as the bad one, because there's no bells, there's no fire warnings, there's no amber captions going off saying number 2 engine EPA problem, or vibration, or all the things that might indicate a problem. They're both at idle, and they're both misbehave. They're both, apparently behaving okay. So when he then changed his mind and assumed it was the left engine, and they brought the right engine up, the fact that they then still didn't see any problem with this number 2 engine, other than they couldn't get full power out of it, that should have really started to, I wonder if it might be the number 1 engine, or why not use both engines, even if the other engine is giving us a bit of power. That would have been my thought. So, don't throw away an engine just because it's not operating at full capacity if you're about to hit the ocean. That's the time. It so reminds me of, I can't think about this kind of an incident without thinking about the Potomac accident, where the guys got airborne with a lot of ice they had probes on the engine pressure systems iced up as they got airborne out of Washington, and they never really got enough power selected on the engine. They were using a reduced thrust takeoff, and they never went to full power, even though it was always available to them. Yes. Had they pushed the throttles up, they could have got more power, and they would have saved so many lives. The same applies to this. If they'd gone to hell with it, we're going to hit the water if we don't do something about this. Let's just push both throttles up and see what happens.
Exactly.
If the engine gives out, well, so be it. But at least we'll have tried.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they didn't really go through that kind of, right, let's do something that's absolutely guaranteed to give us something, an effect that could save us. And they would have then correctly re-identified the damaged engine, and they could have brought the left engine up to full power, and they would have been able to do it. So communication between them, not good. There are lots of areas where they as a crew didn't operate at their best level. I think both of them would probably say this was far from their best days flying. But then again, you never expect to have a major problem. And when your stress levels are high, it is very easy to get swamped, so that even sometimes the simplest thing becomes a really difficult task.
Liz is asking about EPR, if we might explain the exhaust pressure ratio.
Pressure in the front against pressure in the back, really. When the engine is in theory not producing any thrust, should theoretically be at 1. And as you get more thrust out of the engine, the pressure differential, I've never liked EPR. It's a Rolls-Royce thing, I think. But that number increases. It gets up to about 1.7, 1.8. But I've never really. I always looked at the N1 gauges, which is the RPM in a percentage of the engine fan, because I related to that much easier than I did this pressure ratio between the front and the back.
It's not as susceptible to error as the exhaust pressure ratio. But I guess I would say that EPR is like the most informative, indication of the thrust being produced. But it is not necessarily the most reliable means of expressing that. I'm trying to make sure that I'm saying that correctly, but so it depends on the engine manufacturer. I've flown airplanes with, you set power based on exhaust pressure ratio, EPR, for most of the last 25 years or so. And I've also flown jets that use N1 as the indication, the fan speed for indication of thrust produced. But the key is you have to look at both. You can't just exclusively use EPR to determine thrust levels, as as Captain Nick just mentioned, the Air Florida disaster. Had they had something to cross-check that EPR was giving them good information by looking at the fan speeds, they would have realized, oh no, we're not anywhere near. And they knew the power levers weren't exactly where they normally are. They were a little bit further back than they normally are. The engines didn't even sound like they were producing as much noise as they normally do for takeoff. And there are a couple different things going on there. But as Captain Nick just said, when you're in a situation when the airplane's about to hit the river or hit a bridge or hit the ground, my instinct, I hope, will be to just jam those things right through the instrument panel and just hope that you have something there. And same thing in this situation. I'm befuddled by that human factor here. Why were they so worried about the health of their engines that they didn't dare put the power of I would be like, again, the whatever instrument is on the panel right in front of the thrust levers would be broken most likely, because I'd be jamming those things so hard in there to try to get thrust to keep flying.
Yeah.
And why they didn't do that, I don't get that. I was not in this situation, so maybe under that kind of stress, you just kind of don't think to do something which I think would be very instinctive.
One of the reasons we practice engine failures, particularly if we're flying two-engined aircraft over and over again in the simulator, is so that we don't get frozen by the stress of a situation because, it's just another engine failure. I've done this, oodles of time in the sim, so we're going to, do this, that, and the other, off we go. And, you start by just going nice and progressively through the assessment of the problem, identifying the engine, dealing with it, taking the appropriate actions, speaking to air traffic, and it's something that should have been almost second nature to them. This should not have been the drama that it turned into. So, I'm disappointed, but on the other hand, I can see how the errors were made. I can understand how hard it is to ignore air traffic when they're either badgering you or they're making a mistake with your call sign and you're not getting your message through that you need some assistance. I can understand having, without really clear engine indications, how when you've got your both throttles back at idle, it's easy to forget that, oh yeah, it was the right engine that was the problem engine, not the left. And, to make that misidentification. The captain got it right, but he was unwilling to counter his first officer's second assessment on which engine it was. But all he had to do, as you quite correctly say, Jeff, is push the throttles up and see how well they responded. Have a play with them. The engine's broken. You're not going to make it much more broken, but the important thing is to identify which is the good engine. And, so many people have made this mistake in the past that we all understand how vital it is on a 2-engine airplane.
Exactly. And, really not much more to say than that. Now, I know that they were both injured, and I don't know if they were both. I know one of them was seriously injured and the other significantly injured. And I'm wondering if they didn't mention it in the final report that I can recall, if they did recover fully from their injuries here on this.
No, it doesn't mention, although it does say that, one of the pilots was able to walk and move around independently because I think he either climbed into the boat or walked to hospital or whatever. But you don't know really how much that was the stress of the situation, the adrenaline keeping him on his feet. But no, one was critical and the other was seriously injured. And it's to survive an aircraft crashing into the ocean. That's a good result.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's continue with this audio incident at Madison, Wisconsin. And it's kind of ironic, I think, because it was a pilot, an American Airlines captain, who was mad at MAD.
Are they all mad?
Yep, here we go.
Tower American at 2139, holding square 36. We'll be ready to go when you can get that.
American 2139. Sky 4 Romeo is following a skyline about a mile ahead to your left.
Quick, I'm looking for that traffic.
That's now. Tell me to make left traffic, send the downwind, I'll call your base.
Make traffic, downwind, Tower American 2139. Just be advised, we're about 2 minutes away from having to go back to the gate for fuel.
American 2139, Tower Roger, runway 36 line.
Runway 36, American 2139.
American 2139 will just be about 30 seconds away.
Really? Come on, this is a commercial airport, not a touch-and-go field.
American 2139, you could have told me it's about 10 minutes ago, right? We got 4 in the pattern, it happened 5 minutes ago. Now you tell me 1 minute ago you have 2 minutes before you time out. Unacceptable. Touch and go is going to last 20 more seconds and then you can go.
Yeah, don't get like me. We didn't know that 2 minutes ago. This is a commercial airport.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there because they just continue with some more communications of the aircraft that are in the general aviation aircraft in the pattern, doing pattern work, touch and goes and such. And they cleared them for takeoff. And off they went, and the American crew even said, "Good day." It sounded like they were over. Well, that was the first officer. The captain is the one that came on, and he was all upset about this whole thing, in a tizzy. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute now. Does this American Airlines captain not understand that in the United States, at least, The way we operate priority for traffic at public use airports is first come, first served. Now, there are exceptions to that. When an airline flight has a slot time that they have to make, then they receive elevated priority, or if they're experiencing some kind of an emergency, or they're a medevac flight, etc. There are some exceptions, but in general, it can be frustrating for us because we're operating or trying to operate scheduled air service. And when we go to places like Madison, or we go to, let's see, what's the place in Florida that I used to fly in a lot? Sarasota. There's a lot of general aviation traffic down there, and you just have to be patient. It gets frustrating when you're just waiting there, looking at your fuel burning, and looking at your potential late arrival at the wherever you're headed. But you just have to kind of suck it up and understand that that's just the way it works in the United States of America. Am I right about that, Nick Camacho?
Yep, you are. And there are a few exceptions where the biggest of the big airports might have limitations on what sort of activities they can have. But generally they try to flush these sort of operations out with landing fees, right? So like if you can fly a GA airplane into LAX, but there's a significant landing fee that makes it kind of unpalatable. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's very much a first come, first serve thing. And, it does not operate like that. Like the majority as a person that only operates little airplanes, I would say that 90% or more, if there's a close call, it's always going to go towards the jet because the jet's burning more fuel. The jet's holding up, the jet waiting is holding up far more people, which is fine. But, I just want to make that point that for every, one airline captain that gets upset that he does not have the priority, I would say that the general feel is first come, first serve. And then if anything's kind of close, they will modulate the traffic to best fit the largest operation first, is the way that I see it.
They're just trying to manage their traffic there to the most, to make it most efficient for the overall, operation. And, but again, it just, who knows exactly what kind of crappy day that this crew had, what kind of delays that they had, and what kind of pressures, et cetera. But still, you just got to keep your mouth shut. And this guy, you could just tell when he just started to make it was like, like he was like a huge sigh. Like, what is this? What kind of mom and pop operation, rinky dink place is this? We're an American Airlines flight. We're scheduled air service, but move all these people out of our way so we can get on with our flight, Yeah. Just kind of sad.
It's amazing how easy it is to slip and just become, just lose it for a minute or two without remembering that the best way to get good service is to be polite and just really nice and just, make your point without antagonizing the person you're dealing with, because that's just going to make your life an awful lot worse.
Yeah.
If you'd done that at Chicago, it'd have been, what did they call that? The ballpark? They'd have just given him taxi to the ballpark and sit and wait there for an hour. Yeah. Or in New York, they'd have just taxied you clear and made you join the back of the 45-minute queue until you've got a place at the front again, and then say, right, now you're going to be nice about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. That is one thing that kind of surprised me, and I missed it, or I didn't get to listen to all of it this time, so I may have missed it the first time I listened to it, but most of the time when you're flying out of smaller airports like that, at least like San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Wichita, the places that I'm used to flying out of, and you're flying into the larger hubs, everyone has their times, like the time slots. And I would have thought that the time slot they were trying to hit would have been far more, would have been much tighter than their fuel window. So the fact that they could sit there forever, I guess that means they're either not flying to a large hub airport where they have a tight time slot, or they're just on the last leg of their day and they just don't want to put a little more fuel on or something.
Well, there's a lot of information that we don't have access to here. We don't really know the full backstory of what's going on. I did not get the indication that this was like a air traffic control flow time kind of an issue. It was more of something caused the American flight to be delayed in some way. And then finally, when they realized that, okay, we can go now, and now look, we're getting really close to, the minimum fuel for takeoff level. And so it was not necessarily really a timing thing. I think it was more of a fuel related concern that they had. And so again, I don't know exactly how they got themselves into that pickle there with the fuel. But I don't think it, had anything to do with any kind of a flow time from ATC. So
no, the more notice, you give ATC of a potential, fuel issue that you're going to have to go back and refuel, the better. They can fit you in. So don't just sit there. Just when you pipe up, just say, "Oh, we're going to have a problem in 10 minutes if we can't get off. Is anything you can do to ease our departure?" Or something.
And as he mentioned, he said, "Well, you just told me this a minute ago."
Right.
Yeah. What's she supposed to do?
And it's you can tell as soon as you turn the radio on, you have a pretty good feel. You may not be able to tell whether you're going to wait for 7 minutes or 8 minutes at the end of the runway, but you can tell just by listening for 30 seconds or a minute whether you're going to taxi down to the end of the runway and be gone in a minute or two, or be sitting down there for 10 minutes because of the amount of airplanes that are in the pattern or amount of communications.
And I think the best way should have been, other than not really yelling at the air traffic controller to begin with. So let's say you just let that get the best of you and you do it. And it would have been nice if, before they left the pattern and switched to departure control, to say, "Hey, I apologize for my frustration there. Whatever, good job. Yeah. Thank you." And that would have smoothed everything over, I think, immensely. And it's too bad that I guess he was still upset. So
yeah, I just feel sorry for his first officer of that entire flight, because there's only going to be one thing on his mind.
Yeah, I bet that FO was just like going, like he probably wanted to say as he left, "Sorry,
yes,
Captain, I'm flying with as a jerk." All right, we're going to skip the next one and save it for Steffi when we do part 2. And we're going to do one of the crime ones. Okay, so 01E, we have 3 stories of airline employees or contractors behaving badly.
Bad boy.
All right, so which one do you think would be best for us to discuss, Liz, with the boys here? The girlfriend one, okay.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Indeed.
From Paddle Your Own Canoe. Yay, they're back. A veteran Argentinian flight attendant is facing the threat of spending 6 years in prison after she was accused of calling in a bomb threat against a Miami-bound plane because her ex-boyfriend was on board with his new girlfriend. Daniela Carbone, 47, stands accused of aggravated coercion, public intimidation, and obstruction of public service after a false bomb threat resulted in an Aerolíneas Argentinas Airbus A330 aircraft being evacuated on the runway at Ezeiza Airport in Buenos Aires 3 years ago. 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, it says, yeah.
Just not too long ago. Prosecutors allege that she called in the bomb threat to stop her ex-boyfriend from flying to Miami to see his family. The ex-boyfriend is also a flight attendant for the state-run Argentinian flag carrier and was traveling with his new girlfriend, who was also a flight attendant at the same airline. Oh, boy.
Keep it in the family.
Keep it in the family. Local media have reported that Carbone had been in a romantic relationship with her colleague for the past 5 years, but they broke up around 2 months ago. It's alleged that she used her daughter's cell phone with a disposable SIM card to call in the bomb threat with a distorted voice. Tell the captain that we put 3 bombs in the Miami flight. The threat said,
tell the little captain.
Tell the little captain. Ooh, I missed that part. Yeah. Tell the little captain that we put 3 bombs in the Miami. Tell him to stop effing around with politics and check the plane because they are going to be blown to smithereens. Let's see. The May 21st threat resulted in the Airbus A330 aircraft being stopped at the runway in Buenos Aires, and all 270 passengers and 12 crew members evacuated onto the runway while police checked for explosive devices. Carbone had already been terminated by Aerolíneas Argentinas and has been held in custody since May 28 while investigators determine whether there is enough evidence to press charges against the ex-flight attendant. She was arrested at the request of a federal judge by Argentina's anti-terrorist operational unit. Aerolíneas Argentinas says the threat had caused severe economic and reputational damage to the company. A spokesperson confirmed that Carbone had worked for the airline for 24 years and had been an instructor for the past 14.
All right. Well,
it's quite a career to throw away.
No kidding.
That is indeed, actually. But, affairs of the heart have a way of
clouding your judgment.
Mad. Funnily enough, this was more or less the same sort of thing that brought about my first bomb threat.
Oh, when you called in your first bomb threat?
Exactly. I was just trying to depart from a remote stand on the Washington flight, and we got a warning that the bomb threat had been issued against the aircraft. And after it all settled down, we subsequently discovered that they thought, but they couldn't prove, it was a passenger that had arrived late for the flight and they closed the gate, who called it in thinking that if they delayed the flight, they would reopen it for boarding and he would get on it. So
I think we also had that story like a month ago or two, sadly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there you go. Very sad. I mean, shouldn't she have thought through her actions just a little bit? Because 6 years in prison is going to be tough for her, poor love.
Hey, but the bright side, Nick, is that maybe she'll find a new friend in prison.
Absolutely. Oh, she might well. And I wonder if he was a little captain.
Well,
and which bitch was she talking about?
That's what she said.
Oh, that's true. Liz is making the point that it was not the captain that she had the relationship with, but
good point. Yes, good point.
Attendant.
Huh. But she might have had knowledge of the
she may have dated the captain as well. Hence the term "little captain." All right, let's get to know us. Here we go. Getting to know us. Oh, nice, Liz. Just singing in an operatic style. I like that. All right. Getting to know us. It's that time of the show where we kind of get together and talk about what each one of us has been up to since we last saw them on the show. And we're going to go right to Nick Camacho because, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. You've been very busy with your life, and we're glad that you had a few moments to take out of your busy schedule to be with us today. Nick, what have you been up to?
So I think I've missed maybe 2 shows. In that time frame, I went out to California. I was in California for work for a week. Spent a day working on Betsy's Biscuit Bomber. For the winter maintenance, we actually took the front fuel tanks out and essentially rebuilt them. They're aluminum tanks with machined aluminum sumps on the bottom and all sorts of sealing nightmares throughout them. And we had kind of been chasing little leaks here and there. It was kind of like an old boat where you'd plug one leak and then another leak would start and plug that. So
weren't you telling us about the fact that you were losing a certain amount of fuel every so often? And
so we thought we were losing like tens. I think it was maybe like 10 gallons a week or 20 gallons a week in the summer, we thought that was due to evaporation because it's a dark airplane sitting outside and it's 100 degrees in Paso. Now we kind of wondered if it was leaks, like we had small leaks and then the fuel was still evaporating off, but it was leaking out and then, draining down the inside of the wing and evaporating as it drained or ran. Either way, we took the tanks out. We had a couple of our more ambitious team members take the tanks all apart, clean them up, reseal everything. And then last weekend, we put them all back in, got everything hooked up. We did a low power run while I was there. And then they did another engine run in anticipation of a test flight last week. So I guess I keep saying then, but I was up there 2 weekends ago. So then last week, midweek, they did a high power engine run and a test flight, and they were going to fly it. Now we have a issue with the left-hand carburetor. So we're hoping that'll be just a quick turn fix, and then we'll be ready to start flying a little later than we had hoped for this calendar year, but we're getting there.
That's good.
So then from that, I flew home on Thursday. I left California at 5:01 a.m. and got into Wichita at about 12:45, just in time for my wife to pick me up from the Wichita airport on our way down to a little family weekend vacation in Oklahoma, where we met my siblings and a couple other family members we rented a little Airbnb cabin at a lake down in southeast Oklahoma, and spent some time down there. That was fun. The weather was not too bad. It's getting warm in the Midwest now as we get into summer, but it wasn't too bad. My son did his first escape room, so that went. I guess it could have gone better. It was a little more. He got a little more concerned than I thought he would.
He was more into the simulation than reality.
Yeah, so he loves doing, like, we have a little Alexa thing, and they have an escape room game on the Alexa. He loves doing that, and we got him a little. We got a little. I don't know if you'd call it a board game, but like a little, like, in-person type of game we did in our house, and he loved that. And so this was the first one we went out and did an actual escape room, and I think he got a little nervous with some of the sound effects and that sort of stuff. But so then we did that, and we just got home on Sunday and started getting stuff put back together on Sunday for me to go to work on Monday and then start an evening sailing class. So all this week I'm going out to the lake and trying to learn how to sail a little sailboat that my dad got. So
cool.
It's been fun.
Wow. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah. You've been very busy. And how are the projects at work going? Mostly positively or?
Mostly positively. Yeah. We're building up towards a couple of interesting flight tests that'll happen in July and August, probably. Unfortunately, one looks like it's going to coincide with Oshkosh, but I think it's going to be a real cool opportunity. So I may have to cut part of my Oshkosh out to go support this test before I run up there for a couple of days.
Let's talk about that, because there are several people that listen to our show that will be attending Oshkosh this year.
Mm-hmm.
And both Nick and I were there last year. As far as my schedule is concerned, I'm not sure yet if I'm going to be able to make it up to Oshkosh. I'm hoping that I'll be able to go there for a day or two, hopefully. We both do have our media credentials. And so just to let everybody out there know that Nick is planning on being there. I don't know how much of the week you plan on attending, but we're not officially planning any kind of a recording or meetup or anything else, but we're hoping that we'll be able to, see you all up there, see some folks that are there each and every year and are part of our community.
Yep. And like I said, it kind of depends on how this work event turns out, but I would guess that I will be up there either most of the week or maybe just 2 or 3 days. And if it ends up that I'm working the first half of the week, I might try to zip up there on the airlines with my older son and have him get his first experience at Oshkosh.
Oh, nice.
So we'll just see how it goes.
So Betsy's Biscuit Bomber is not going to be there this year?
That is also still up in the air.
Okay.
I think the possibility exists that it could make it. We had a couple of functions that we were going to try to do in the Midwest in June that we didn't have the airplane ready for. If we can shift those to July, I think there's still a possibility the airplane will be out for Oshkosh, but also up in the air.
All right. It's also a possibility that you might be flying your Debonair there, depending on the schedule.
I would say that's probably not a possibility because I don't think we still haven't sorted out the final path for the engine situation.
Gotcha.
But I don't think any of the paths that we're looking at will be completed in the time frame that we need it to be.
Well, hopefully. It sounds like Nick has a better chance of making it up for at least a few days. And as for me, it just all depends on, I don't know, really. I know half of my next month is going to be spent in the UK. And I'm not sure how much I'll be able to, do other than flying for the rest of the month. Who knows? Maybe I'll just blow off the entire month and just play. I don't know. We'll see. Speaking of the UK, Nick, Captain Nick, what has been going on? I know we just recently recorded on Saturday, and it's only Wednesday, so it was just a few days ago. It didn't seem that long ago. But have you played some more bowling matches?
Oh, most certainly, yeah. I had a really good game a couple of days ago. League match, 3 rinks, so 3 teams playing 3 opposition teams on their home ground. And we won conclusively on all 3 rinks, so that was a great result. Actually, that was just yesterday. It was just last night.
Oh, I guess
and lots more games coming out. I think it was but I'm laying off for a few days because I have to pop into hospital very early tomorrow morning for a small bit of surgery, which is nothing to be concerned about, but it might make me a little uncomfortable. I can't imagine a surgery that wouldn't make you just a little uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm going for a bit of a facelift and going to have some improvement in my chest area, and I thought I'd have a bit of a tummy tuck while I was at it, that sort of thing.
And maybe add a mordectomy procedure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Actually, I already have problems with it. It gets in the way a bit. So I'm thinking of having a reduction. Down to something sensible. But anyway, we'll discuss that with the doctor.
Be careful. You don't want to become a little captain.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, quite right too. And then now next week is going to be a busy week. Got county triples. That's big match. And then at the end of that, we have got minor matches during the whole week. You arrive on the Sunday. Got pairs match the day before. Now, I was trying not to fill your time with us with bowls, but the 4th round of the home counties singles need to be played, and it looks like we're doing that.
I want to go to those.
Well, that's very kind of you. I'm sure I would hope you enjoy it. I'm going to feel like there's a bit of pressure on me, other than just playing this play.
Well, maybe I'll have my computer, my laptop with me. And
that's right. Sitting quietly,
editing
over
the show that we just recorded, and then I'll just pretend like I'm not paying attention, and it takes all the pressure off you.
There, thank you. So that's on Wednesday the 7th, but in the evening, and then we'll go out for a bite to eat afterwards, I expect. Mm-hmm. Then we have, I forgot to mention, of course, that the day before that, we have the London APG meetup. at the RAF Museum in the afternoon, 2 p.m. onwards. And then when the museum closes, we're going to the Beaufort Pub in Heritage Avenue, right near the RAF Museum at Hendon, which is North London. And that is our 4th of July meetup, because the Yanks are coming, or the Yankees anyway. We are also going to have a meetup on Friday the 7th when we go up north to the Grand Prix. And very nicely, Captain Nigel, although he won't be there, he's given us permission to assemble in his garden. He's got a very nice house in Upper Tadmarton. So there's a postcode there, OX15 5SN. And that's where we'll be meeting at sort of 6 o'clock in the evening after we've come back from Silverstone. And we're going to get some beer in. I've taken a look at the Hook Brewery that we went to. Do you remember our visit to that brewery, Jeff?
I do. That was great.
Yeah, we can buy some, little casks of ale from them. And we'll buy a couple of those so that people can have some beer. By the way, if it looks like it's going to be filthy weather, we will walk down the road to the Lampet Arms in the village. But the idea is to try and do this at Nigel's house. So Barnstones Main Road, Upper Tadmarton, in there. So looking forward to that. And other than that, not much has happened, and not much will, I hope.
Very good. Well, let's see. I flew a 2-day trip on Monday, returned yesterday morning. Of course, that is after what I do over the weekends, which of course you all know is...
I'm singing!
Yep, doing a lot of singing. And so when about a week ago or so, maybe a little bit longer, I was contacted by one of our APG community members who is a new hire at Acme, and he had already gone through the induct program that AJ just went through. I had a meetup with him a couple of weeks back, and Ranjit said that he was going to be there for the A320 school. And I think I talk about it a little bit in our audio that I recorded. And but anyway, he said if there was a chance that I might be in the airport area, that he would love to get together with me. And so I decided to just delay my trip home from the airport a few hours and do some editing on our last episode, which I did. It worked out great. And then after he was out of his simulator period, we met up and recorded this. Hello, crew. I am on another meetup, this time down at the ATL again, and this time eating some awesome Greek food at what used to be called Nick's. Now it's just called Grecian Gyro. I think Nick may have sold the place. It used to be Nick's.
I didn't.
It doesn't matter.
Who
cares?
So
hey, what's important is I'm down here with an airline pilot guy, community member, and also Acme pilot, new Acme pilot going to training here on the Airbus 320 family. And he's flown the Airbus before for JetBlue or whatever we want to call it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You're not flying for them anymore, so who cares?
Nah, that's right.
And so he's learning the way that Acme does it. It's a little bit different, he's telling me. And so he contacted me and asked if I had a chance. It'd be nice to get together for lunch or whatever. So hopefully we'll be able to do this again.
Absolutely.
Ranjit. But this is Ranjit, and he's going to say hello to everybody. So here we go.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to finally meet Jeff here in person after hearing his voice for many years on the podcast. But yeah, hello, everyone, and hopefully we can do this more.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, short and sweet. I love it. Thank you. All right. Well, so we just enjoyed, you had a falafel wrap, and I had the special, which is like a steak and shrimp wrap with a nice tzatziki sauce. And so we give it 2 thumbs up. If you're ever here on Virginia Avenue across from Mecca, the Acme headquarters. Check out Grecian Hydro. And with that, we're going to send it back to the studio.
Back to you, Jeff.
Okay. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. Nice meeting Rajit yesterday. And hopefully we'll have more meetups in the future. And my dinner. Oh, yeah, I guess I could do that. It was Father's Day on Sunday here. And my youngest daughter, Natalie, called up and asked if I weren't busy, that she would like to take me to dinner. And so we had a very nice dinner at a local restaurant, and got a chance to get all caught up. She took a week of vacation a couple of weeks ago, flew out to Salt Lake City, rented a car, and then visited 5 of the national parks in Utah. And so she told me all about that, and she had a lot of fun, and it was a very interesting experience for her. And the cool thing is that she, at some point a while back, she asked if it would be okay that in the future, after I got the motorhome and I'm retired and I'm out, driving around the West or around some of the national parks, if she had some time off, that she would like to join me to see some of these things. So I think that's pretty cool. Looking forward to that. And so anyway, we had a great time with Natalie on Sunday evening. So there you go.
Brilliant. Well done. Jeff, I forgot something. Can I feed in a little bit?
No, I'm sorry. Your time is up. You'll have to wait till the next step. No, go ahead. Of course.
I'll send a bit of extra money to the coffee bar.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I've got an old friend of mine, ex-Air Force guy and Virgin Atlantic captain, who is a great photographer and publishes his own books, called Ian Black. And his latest book is this one, called the McDonnell Douglas F4 UK, and it's called The Manual, Part 1, and by Ian Black. And there is a manual in the UK called the Haynes Manual, famous for teaching you how.
Here too.
Oh, you do? You get the Haynes in there? Okay, brilliant.
The Chilton and Haynes manuals. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, inventive people did Haynes manuals for all sorts of odd things that you're not likely to need a Haynes manual for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it helps you fix your car, but they did them for tanks and boats and all sorts of things. And Ian was going to do one for the Phantom, but it didn't quite work out as a Haynes manual, but he did one anyway with more stories about the Phantom. And there's a centerfold all about QRA. And he pinched a couple of pictures from me of QRA and of my 10 Bear badge, which you can just about see at the bottom of the picture there, for 10 live intercepts. And very kindly sent me a free copy of his book. So thank you very much indeed, Ian. And I can thoroughly recommend it. Anyone who has an interest in the RAF's Phantoms, slightly different from the USAF and US Navy ones, but a great read anyway. It's got some super pictures in there and lots of good stories about the Phantom operations.
So did I understand you correctly that you actually feature in a centerfold? Wow.
Yeah. Well, a picture of mine. I always like doing the centerfold pictures. They're very nice. Yeah, they're very tastefully done there.
All right. So we're going to talk about the last cover art for episode 574. At Bobus, we take cockpit security seriously. Yes, we do. Tell us about this, Nick. Now, I'm going to, Liz, if that's all right with you, I'm going to go ahead and switch to my screen sharing so I can zoom in on this, because we're going to have to take a good look at this.
Oh, I think we are. Yeah, the title came from the FAA, the story about the FAA's policy that in future they are going to insist on having 2 flight deck doors. So there's a sort of airlock procedure going in and out of the flight deck. It hasn't been enacted as a law yet, but we were certainly talking about it. And as a result, we came up with the idea that we'd do something like the Get Smart TV program and movie that some people might know, where to get into his secret headquarters, he has to go through dozens of doors. So that was the idea behind this. And of course, having done a cutaway aircraft with, I didn't count the doors, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 flight deck doors on this particular version, and all the passengers are crammed into what remains of the aircraft, not a great deal. I thought I have an ideal opportunity to put a few figures in there. So we have got a special pilot, if we start at the front.
I see that. Up
front. Who is obviously would only prefer one flight deck door because he's only got one finger sticking up.
Or maybe he is like trying to scrape some goo or something like that off the.
It could be, yes,
window.
yes,
Yeah.
I know, yeah, but I have seen that
finger.
I have seen that pilot somewhere before. I'm not quite sure where.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, he's the pilot, and obviously looks a little upset. And if you go back into the passenger compartment, leaning on the table there in that forward passenger compartment, I'm sure that's someone who is deadheading. He looks like a cargo pilot, and he's looks like he's deadheading with some very odd looking passengers. And beside him, in a funny looking little compartment, is a pilot and a whole bunch of parachute jumpers.
That's weird.
A pilot in a pink hat. Yeah. Yeah. And in the next compartment, we're getting very close down to steerage now. We've got a producer and an old pilot there.
And one of the passengers is getting really, really kind of comfortable with Liz, the producer.
I think so, yes. I'm not quite sure what he's got on his head, but there you go. But I like the steerage area where there's a lot of dodgy looking people all crammed in. I think many of them are stowaways. There's some bloke in his pajamas lounging around with his dog. I don't know how he got his dog on board, but there you go. Now, with people like that on, you can understand the need for multiple cockpit doors just to keep everything safe and secure.
Yeah. The guy in the back has an emotional support dog.
Yeah, he does indeed.
Liz.
Yeah. But and there's the show number in our GRR Tront.
What does that even mean?
It's obviously a copy Trent. Tront 574. There you go.
Ah, okay. That's from Grand Rapids. Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Okay. Fair enough. So, yeah, thank you for Midjourney for producing that. That kind of looked like a bit like an airplane, that one. And when you asked for a cutaway, it did a reasonable job, I thought.
Yeah, I thought it did as well.
Quite advanced. It's got one of these wacky electric towing devices on the nose wheel to drag you out to the airport. To the end of the runway to save fuel. So I think the stairs are a little bit short for most people to get into the aircraft, but I have no idea and we've got an engineer with us. Nick, what are these tables, 3-wheeled tables they've got underneath?
It almost looks like, that episode where the center one of the center gear off of a 747 went flying off.
Oh yes.
Looks like they were just making good use of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, they're very imaginative, this AI. So
it is.
I might point out that it didn't put the 7 doors in. I had to manually do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So again, a marriage of Midjourney and then also
Midjourney made it a lot easier though.
Oh yeah, I do want to talk about that, Liz. Thank you. I promised Kevin from Pilot Edge that I would mention their yearly program called SimVenture, this time SimVenture 2023. And so we're going to skip the evolution of this commercial that Kevin sent me and just go straight to the final result. And so if you'll take a listen to what Kevin and his friend at Pilot Edge have to say about this, I think that anybody that is even considering heading up to Oshkosh, flying in specifically, should check out this offering from Pilot Edge.
Get out the way! Help!
Flying to Oshkosh this year, or know someone who is? The famous Fisk arrival and AirVenture can be very complex, busy, and fast-paced. Whether you're a rookie or a veteran, everyone can benefit from some training and proficiency prior to following the railroad tracks and rocking their wings. Luckily, you can prepare ahead of time using your home flight simulator. X-Plane 11 Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 Prepared or FSX is your gateway to participate in SimVenture. SimVenture is put on by Pilot Edge and has the actual Oshkosh air traffic controllers volunteering for your benefit to help you prepare for AirVenture. It all happens July 13th through 16th. Visit pilotedge.net/SimVenture to learn more.
July 13th through 16. Check it out by going over to pilotedge.net/SimVenture. Can you imagine listening to that in 1.5 or 2x? He was already talking so fast I can hardly understand him. my old brain, I just can't keep up with it.
That's because we're old people.
I know. Can't keep up with the kids anymore. Right? Yeah. 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 Let's, we have about 6 minutes remaining. And so why don't we cover at least one of these pieces of feedback before we sign off? What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
All right.
Captain, incoming message.
All right, we're going to start with item 4 from Martin. A question about pilot permitted activities during layover free time. He says, I love listening to the APG episodes. Been listening since around episode 200. Wow, that's been a while. Was great to hear Captain Dana again on episode 571. I was curious about whether pilots are restricted from any activities during layovers. Activities that might cause a pilot to be unable to fly their scheduled flights or cause injuries, etc. I'm a volunteer bus driver for a large church, driving mostly 50-plus passenger buses. If I'm on a trip or some other activity, I may often refrain from participating in some activities that might make me unable to safely drive a group back. I've taken them to activities where there is the possibility of some injury that would make me unsafe to drive. If that happened, usually there is not a backup driver to fill in if I'm away some distance. I realize the airlines usually have standby pilots available to complete a flight, but I didn't know if the airlines discouraged or restricted any layover activities. Thanks, Martin. At Acme, I'm not aware of anything other than just make sure that you plan your rest so that you get the FAA required rest, and also close metering of your alcohol intake.
Yeah.
That you comply with those regulations. But other than that, I'm not aware of anything that's restricted. Although it may not be a great idea. I've heard of people on their layovers like going snow skiing, that kind of thing, and bungee jumping, I guess. I don't know. I've not heard of anybody doing that, but I guess that's a possibility. But I don't know. How about you, Captain Nick? Any restrictions that you guys had when you were on layovers?
Yeah, the only one I can remember from a company manual was scuba diving. So you weren't allowed to scuba dive within 24 hours, or it might even have been 48 hours of flying, because of the dangers that you might still have compressed nitrogen hovering around in your body, particularly in your joints. And if the aircraft did depressurize, that could bubble out and cause you significant pain, if not incapacitate you. So that was one activity I would definitely recommend people avoid if you're on a short layover. If you're on a long layover, fine. But certainly restrict your depth if you're on a short layover. If you're just going to puddle around the Great Barrier Reef at 10 meters, 30 feet or so, then that's probably not going to be a problem. But if you're going to do a deep dive, then definitely give yourself a good gap before you fly. And actually, that also applies to you if you're a passenger, because I know it's pretty unlikely the aircraft will depressurize, but the last thing you want to do is end up in a situation where the aircraft is depressurized, the crew are all occupied or sat down on oxygen, etc., and you're now suddenly suffering from the bends because of the massive change in pressure. So I would just have a real think about that and make your last couple of dives relatively shallow. That would be sensible. Now, the thing that our company did was they changed their insurance for medical and accident insurance down route to include dangerous sports. And then they listed a whole list of things that the insurer would not cover you for. Now, if you're in a foreign country and you've got to pay for your own, so you've got to be casevaced off a ski slope or whatever, that would, and then put up in a hospital, which you've now got to pay for yourself. The companies won't cover it. That's going to be dreadfully dangerous. And it covered all sorts of things. Motorcycle riding, the ridiculous things that even though we were pilots, we weren't allowed to rent an airplane and go flying on our layovers, that sort of thing. So we made a bit of a fuss about that. And after a few years, that was all relinquished and we went back to our original supplier. But funny enough, during that period, there were some very odd accidents. So people, someone who shall remain nameless, got quite badly injured on a skiing accident. They're up on the slopes near LA, and Great Bear, I think it was, that the crew used to go to.
Big Bear.
And so Big Bear, that's it. So they got themselves shipped back to their room, whereupon they called the reception and said, I've fallen over in my bath and blood everywhere. And they were successfully treated. And another bloke who was actually carrying his hang glider to the top of a big ridge in South Africa said, I was just hill walking and I fell over. Instead of what really happened was he hang glided off the edge and flew into a big rock. Yes, exactly. So people were having to make up all these stories to make sure that they were covered. And I used to go, I did shark diving in South Africa. And, we used to just do sensible things like renting motorcycles in LA and have fun. But you're not there for that long. So it's not like you can do too much. But I mean, you could just as easily get run over crossing the road in New York as many of these things.
That's true.
All the traffic's coming from the wrong direction.
Oh, yeah. You have to look the correct way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think this would be a good place to stop. Yeah. Okay. So, we managed to cover at least one piece of feedback and several news items with part one, and we are going to continue episode 575 in, I don't know how many hours, about 3 hours or so, 6:30 Eastern. And so shortly, and if you're listening to the audio podcast, like in just a few seconds, you're going to hear the replacement hosts' voices, and we'll continue with our show. But in the meantime, we're going to say goodbye to Captain Nick and Nick Camacho. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, bye. And I'm going to say hi, Steph.
See you guys later.
Is there any reason for us to end it immediately? Do we need to? Yeah, we're fine. Now we're a couple of title ideas.
Nick, here you go. These are my suggestions.
Okay.
The Little Captain.
Funny if I have that one. Yeah.
Okay. Which engine is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the Summer Solstice Show. So you can be flying around Stonehenge there.
Sorry. The Summer Solstice Show. Yes, I like it.
Okay. That's all
What
I
about
got.
something like the Little Captain with the big dictotomy or whatever Jeff said.
Atomordictomy.
Yeah.
Atomordictomy.
Yeah. There you go.
Little captain with the big digit. Is that what you're trying to say?
Less explicit.
Got to be careful, though.
I'll leave that to you guys to determine.
Excellent. Well done.
So everybody, anybody that wants to come back and join us later, the links are up on Facebook, and I tweeted them out this morning. So you can find that YouTube link, and Jeff will update the website after we finish this broadcast again. So if you want to join us later, we'd love to see you.
Excellent. I'm going to bed.
Hope everything goes well tomorrow, Nick.
Thanks. I'm going to be out of it, so I don't care.
Well, tell Jilly to let us know that you're okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure she will. Don't worry.
Why don't we we'll say goodbye to our live audience. Hopefully we'll see you soon. And,
bye, everybody.
End the broadcast and then just have a quick post chat. Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.